do you want to play a little game first? So you know the story that's leading the news. It is quite correctly leading the news. It is an important story. It affects many, 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 many of us. It affects all of us. Just some of us very directly and some of us somewhat less so. It is Rishi Sunak's somewhat belated attempt to meet the pay demands of various unions, and the attempt has been greeted rather differently depending upon which sector you are looking at. Teachers, as you've heard, seem set to pause their industrial action. They were seeking just north of 10% and have received roughly half of that. Basically, these offers are between 5 and 7%. I know what question I'm going to ask you, but if you were in charge of the programme, what question would you ask this morning? Just text me, 84850, or tweet at Mr. James OB. Just a genuine, clever question based upon these conflicting or combined is a better word, these combined headlines. NHS unions fury after PM insists pay offer is final. Foreigners to fund half of pay rises. Sunak orders £1 billion cuts to fund pay rises for public sector workers, and pay rises for 1 million UK workers as Number 10 tries to end strikes. Actually, I'll give you the Daily Express front page as well, because it's a pretty grim reflection of Brexit Britain. Fees paid by migrants will fund pay rises. So we find ourselves now in the frankly incredible position of having a government that is simultaneously telling us that we need fewer foreigners coming here, but also that they need to come here in order to pay for the pay rises of people in the sectors that are so crippled by vacancies that we need more people to come. You just couldn't make it up, could you? You don't have to. Pay relief but cuts pain on the front of the Mirror. And there you have it. So what question? And Sunak gives NHS strike doctors 6% final offer. So there's quite a lot of conflicting or combined headlines going on there, all of which reflect the same story, which is the government's attempt yesterday to meet the recommendations of the independent pay bodies that will see junior doctors, teachers, police and prison officers have their salaries for the current financial year raised by at least 6%, which, when you consider that junior doctors, their opening request or requirement was 35%, you have a slight indication of the problem. Do you know, I might do this more often, because there is a sort of consensus emerging on why didn't he do this months ago? Why has it taken him so long to do this? Think of all the pain that could have been avoided and all the strife and all the strikes, indeed. Strife and strikes, strikes and strife that could have been avoided if he had done it sooner. Why has it taken him so long? Because the politics hasn't really worked. We discussed yesterday how they've not seen the usual demonisation of striking workers, whether it is in the private sector on the railways or the public sector, which were under scrutiny yesterday. And so that they haven't got any political boost out of it whatsoever. They haven't landed any punches on Keir Starmer by constantly accusing him of being on the side of the strikers, have they? I don't think that's particularly landed at all. And all they've done is have this terribly long, drawn-out process, at the end of which they do enough, it would seem, at the first hurdle to keep at least the 4 teaching unions relatively happy. They've all said, all 4 major teaching unions have said they're ready to call off strike action. They had been threatening coordinated strike action in September, but the NEU, the ASCL, the NAHT and the NASUWT said it was the largest ever recommendation from their pay review body, so they would urge members to accept it. That's a full 6.5% starting next year, and we will see whether teachers will accept it. Which angle should we go for then? I think the bit that sticks in my craw the most is the foreigner tax, but I don't really know enough to be 100% sure it's as grim as it looks. If you want to come here, you'll have to pay even more than you currently do. It's a bit odd, isn't it? I can just about understand the NHS premium. It doesn't apply, I don't think, to NHS workers. So if you come here from overseas and work in the NHS, you don't have to pay a fairly hefty premium to then access the services which you are helping to provide. But that seems in and of itself unfair to me. I mean, does an NHS worker make a measurably greater contribution to the smooth running of society than workers in other sectors who don't get a dispensation from paying for the premium. I mean, it would involve, wouldn't it, people working in agriculture or food production getting cheaper food than everybody else who's foreign. I mean, this rabbit hole of xenophobia that we've been heading down since 2016 just gets twistier and twistier and twistier. I just think it's grim and weird that the government is calling upon foreigners to fund the public sector pay rises. I think it's grim and I think it's weird, but I would like to be wrong. This means that the government policy for pay rises is essentially that they will be largely funded by people who don't currently live here. To have a think about that. The NHS surcharge in particular, which is going to go up from £470 to £776 for students, and from £624 to £1,035 for everybody else. That's a 66% pay rise. This is for most foreign people hoping to temporarily live in the UK for more than 6 months. So that is the policy. How are you going to get the money to fund the pay rises? Well, we're going to take it off foreign workers and foreign students. I just think that's weird and grim, but I would like to be wrong. And then secondly, there's going to be big increases in foreign visa fees. Now, if we don't know much, as we pontificate about these issues in our London studio, if we don't know much about what the doctor situation was in Scotland, which makes a complete mockery of the Westminster government's offer to the BMA yesterday, then it is probably fair to say that we don't know an awful lot about what it's like to actually come here from overseas and now pay for visas. And it doesn't make sense to me that at a time when sector after sector after sector is screaming for more staff, we're putting up more barriers to people coming here. So we're putting up moral and rhetorical barriers. The political narrative is one of negativity. The so-called new conservatives were talking only 2 weeks ago about how they should stop bringing in anybody from overseas to work in care homes because British people who currently don't work in care homes and have expressed no ambition whatsoever to work in care homes should somehow be compelled to work in care homes. One of the stupidest policies you've ever heard, but it'll probably get you a job on GBBs by punting that up the flagpole and seeing who salutes. So we've got the moral and rhetorical negativity in place to dissuade people from coming here. We've got the economic negativity in place. The offers that you will see in any sector, from lorry driving to healthcare, will be higher in other European countries. So if you were thinking of coming here from another European country, you would think twice. So what we're really going after is the people who aren't allowed to work in other European countries, because you can control your borders when you're in the EU, so who could perhaps be tempted to come here. And on top of paying income tax and national insurance, we're now going to ask them to pay a premium for the crime of being foreign. And these are profits, remember. That's the point. This is not bureaucracy. He's let the cat out of the bag a bit here, Rishi Sunak, because if you're going to defend surcharges for foreign students or foreign workers, you could perhaps defend it on the grounds, well, it costs a lot of money. There's a lot of paperwork to do to control our borders. There's a lot of paperwork to do to get people visas. But he's now saying we're going to use the money to fund public sector pay rises. So this is profit. This is literally saying we're going to make some money out of these foreign mugs and we're going to use it to pay teachers. Despite the fact, of course, that they'll be paying the same levels of income tax as everybody else in the country is in order to fund things like education. So what did I say? Did I say weird and grim? I think I said weird and grim. Those are the two words that I'm going for. Sounds like a terrible firm of solicitors, doesn't it? Weird and grim. Or grim and weird, I believe I said. There's a bit of a battle over at Grim and Weird over whose name should take precedence. They're going to bring in a brand consultant to decide which one trips more winningly off the tongue. Grim and weird. Weird and grim. Grim and weird. There could be two Grims and a weird. It could be grim, grim and weird. Or grim, weird and grim. What about Grim and Sons? Incorporating weird. I don't know. But I find it a grim and a weird policy. And I am not, as I mentioned, inflicting a lengthy analysis upon you. I am, however, warning you that when I spend 10 minutes at the top of an hour talking about something completely different, it does sometimes impact upon the quantity, if not the quality, of the calls. So that's a call to arms. That's a heads up. I just want to know what you think about it. I'm not in the mood for a scrap. I'm going on holiday at the weekend. But the idea that foreign people should pay for public sector pay rises simply because they are foreign, regardless of what job they're doing, how much tax they are paying, or what sectors they are helping, seems to me to be, I'll say it again, grim and weird. And I can see a justification for it at a bureaucratic level. If I'm applying for a passport, I pay because the passport processing people have to be paid, right? But this is pure profit. They're doubling. They're putting it up by 66%, not doubling it. And I also want to know from people that have been through it what the costs are. How much does it cost to come here now? Because I don't think we've had that conversation for a long, 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 long time.